Princess Leora stood at the center of the Great Hall of Valyria, beneath a dome of silver crystal that reflected her face 1,000 times. To any outsider, the scene would have looked beautiful. Thousands of alien nobles dressed in royal robes, glowing lanterns floating through the air, and music played by hovering instruments. But to Leora, it felt like a stage built only to humiliate her. She kept her back straight, even when her hands trembled slightly inside her sleeves. According to ancient tradition, this was the bonding ceremony, where young nobles presented themselves before all the great houses and waited for suitors to step forward. It was supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be hopeful, but for her it had become torture. One by one, the nobles had walked past her without stopping. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked away as if she did not exist. Others openly whispered cruel jokes. She pretended not to hear, but some words were sharp enough to cut through even her strongest walls. Why is she even here? She looks too weak. No warrior would want someone like her. She's a disappointment to her bloodline. Leora kept her expression calm. She had trained her entire life to hide her pain. Her golden eyes, normally soft and gentle, were now empty, staring straight ahead as if she could not feel anything. But she could. She felt everything. Among the guests invited to observe the ceremony was a human named Ethan Cole. He stood near the back of the hall, dressed in a dark suit provided by the Valyrian court. He had been sent from Earth as a diplomatic representative, a sign of peace between their species. He was not supposed to interfere. He was only supposed to watch. But as the hours passed and he saw the silent cruelty happening in plain sight, he clenched his jaw tighter and tighter. He had expected strict traditions. He had expected cultural differences. He did not expect this level of public rejection. Why wasn't anyone stepping forward? She was beautiful by any standard. Her long silver hair glowed faintly beneath the lantern light. Her delicate features were calm and dignified. Even if she was softer than the warrior women of her world, she carried herself with more grace than anyone in the room. And yet, nobody wanted her. The announcer's voice echoed across the hall, louder than before, as if he wanted to hurry and get it over with. Last call. Does any noble house wish to claim Princess Leora of the first lineage for bonding? Silence. Ethan felt something twist inside his chest. This wasn't just rejection. It was humiliation displayed like entertainment. The announcer waited a few seconds longer. Then he sighed loudly and declared, "No claimant. Princess Leora is hereby." Before he could finish, Leora finally moved. The entire hall went silent. Everyone expected her to walk away in shame. But instead she turned, not toward the exit, but toward the audience. Her golden eyes scanned the crowd. For the first time since the ceremony began, Ethan saw her expression clearly. She wasn't cold. She wasn't empty. She was deeply, unbelievably lonely. She looked like someone who had not been touched with kindness in a very long time. Then, her eyes found his. Ethan froze. His heart skipped once, then twice. Why is she looking at me? She took a single step in his direction. The crowd murmured in confusion. Some followed her gaze and noticed Ethan for the first time. A human among them was already unusual. But for royalty to look directly at him? She continued walking, one step at a time, but with increasing determination. The whispers around the hall turned into gasps. Is she... No, she wouldn't. She's not serious. Ethan swallowed. His mind spun with questions. Should he look away? Should he bow? Should he pretend he didn't notice?
He didn't move.
He couldn't. She stopped right in front of him. Up close, he noticed details he hadn't seen before. Her shoulders were tense beneath the fabric of her gown. Her breathing was slow but heavy. She was afraid of being rejected again, but she still spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silent hall clearly. "Human," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "Will you be my husband?" The entire hall burst into shocked outcry. Voices overlapped in disbelief. "This is outrageous," she asked a human. "Is this a joke?" "Impossible, he cannot accept." Ethan didn't hear them. For a moment, everything around him faded. All he could see was her. She was not asking out of politics, not out of duty. She was asking because she had nowhere else to turn. Ethan took a slow breath. His heart pounded. He knew that whatever he said next would change everything. He glanced around. Some Valyrian nobles stared at him with hatred. Others looked amused, waiting for him to refuse and add to her shame. They expected him to step back. Instead, he stepped forward. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. He placed his hand gently over hers. The hall went completely silent. His voice was steady when he spoke. Except, for a second, no one reacted. It was as if the entire hall refused to believe what had just happened. Then chaos erupted. Nobles jumped from their seats. The announcer nearly dropped his staff. Commanders shouted about broken traditions. Some even called for guards to intervene. 2 armored guards stepped forward, unsure if they should separate the two. But before they could act, an elder from the council stood up and raised a hand. "Stop," the elder said firmly. His voice was old but powerful. Ancient law states that a proposal made before witness and accepted by hand contact is valid. Species does not matter. But he's a human, someone argued. The law does not care, the elder replied. Leora still hadn't moved. She stared at their joined hands, her lips slightly parted, as if she too couldn't believe someone had said yes. She slowly lifted her gaze to Ethan. "Do you understand what you've done?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Probably not fully," he admitted. "But I know you didn't deserve what happened today." Something in her eyes softened. A very small breath escaped her lips. It wasn't quite a sigh. It wasn't quite a laugh. It was relief. The elder continued speaking to the hall. "By tradition, the human must now undergo the trials of worth to prove he is fit to stand as her bonded partner." Ethan blinked. "Trials of what?" Leora turned to him. "They are difficult," she said carefully. "Define difficult," he said. "You may have to fight warriors," she said honestly, "or survive harsh conditions, or prove your mind's strength through psychic examinations." Ethan stared at her. "And if I fail?" "Then they will annul the bond," she said quietly. "And I will be sent away, to a convent, permanently." He exhaled slowly. "So I have to pass." Leora stared at him as if she couldn't understand how he could say that so casually. "You are human," she whispered. "You are not trained like us. You may be hurt. You may—" "I said I accept," he replied gently. "I'm not going to leave you alone now." Her lips parted again. She looked like she wanted to protest, but she couldn't, because no one had ever spoken to her like that before. The guards approached them but did not separate them. Instead, they bowed slightly. "By order of the council," one of them said, "Princess Leora and the human Ethan Cole are to be escorted to the preparatory quarters." Ethan glanced at Leora. "Is that safe?" She nodded. "It is custom. They will not harm us." They walked together through the crowd. The nobles parted for them, but not out of respect. Some glared with disgust. Others looked curious. A few seemed almost impressed, but Ethan didn't care about them. He only watched Leora. As they entered the hallway beyond the great hall, away from the noise, the silence between them grew heavy. She walked beside him without speaking. Her hands were clasped in front of her and her steps were slow and graceful. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Are you okay?" Leora stopped walking. She turned to him slowly, her golden eyes unreadable. "No one has asked me that before," she said. Ethan blinked. "Ever?" She shook her head. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he exhaled softly. "Well," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, "get used to it. I'm probably going to ask you that a lot." Something changed in her gaze. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. Hope. "I do not understand you," she said softly. "You don't have to," he replied. "We'll figure it out." She looked at him for a long time, then very slowly she nodded. They walked on. For the first time in her life, Princess Leora did not walk alone. Ethan and Leora arrived at the preparatory quarters, a wing of the palace rarely seen by outsiders. The corridors were lined with tall columns, softly glowing crystals casting gentle light along polished floors. The air smelled faintly of minerals and strange flowers, a scent Leora found comforting and strange at the same time. Once they were inside a quiet room, the guards bowed and left them alone. Leora leaned against the wall, her hands trembling slightly. "You really accepted me," she whispered almost to herself. "I did," Ethan said, watching her carefully. "You needed someone to say yes. I just happened to be there." She let out a small laugh, soft and hollow. Everyone else rejected me. My own people. My own family. They call me weak. Ethan shook his head. You are not weak. You just haven't had someone stand beside you. That's all. Her golden eyes glistened. I've spent my entire life being seen as useless. I thought that maybe today I would finally be accepted, but instead, she swallowed hard. I was humiliated. You're not humiliated now, Ethan said firmly. You're standing up. You face them even when no one else would. That's courage. For the first time, she looked at him not as a stranger, but as someone who might actually understand. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She was trying to hold back emotions she had buried for years. They will never accept you, she said quietly, almost a statement of fact. I don't care, he replied simply. I'm not here to be accepted. I'm here to stand with you. The silence after his words was heavy but warm. Leora felt something she hadn't felt in years, a spark of trust. The next day, the trials of worth began. Ethan was escorted to a training hall where warriors of Valyria gathered, their forms tall and intimidating, their eyes sharp and calculating. Leora followed behind, her expression calm but her heart pounding. You may begin, one of the elders said, a stern figure with flowing robes. Human, prove your worth. Complete the challenges or the bond will be annulled. Ethan nodded, though his stomach twisted nervously. He had trained as an engineer on Earth, not as a warrior in an alien world. But he reminded himself that courage was not about size or strength. It was about standing up when it mattered most. The first challenge was combat. He was paired against a warrior who was nearly twice his size, with long, sharp claws and reflexes honed by years of training. Ethan's first instinct was to dodge, but he quickly realized he could not rely on speed alone. He observed the warrior's movements, noting the slight patterns in their strikes. Using a combination of agility, timing, and careful strategy, he avoided the dangerous hits. He fell and rolled, grabbed the warrior's wrist during a swing, and managed to push him back just enough to demonstrate skill. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some whispered that he had lucked out. Others argued that no human could survive so long. Leora's eyes glimmered as she watched. She felt proud. For the first time, someone she had chosen had stepped into her world and faced it bravely. The second challenge was endurance. Ethan had to cross a harsh training field filled with extreme weather simulations, blinding rain, searing heat, and strong winds. His body ached and his lungs burned. Several Valyrian warriors had tried and failed, sliding on wet rocks or giving up after hours. Ethan kept moving. He remembered Leora's words from the previous night. They will not accept you, but you must be willing to fight for me. Every time exhaustion threatened to stop him, he thought of her standing alone in the great hall, rejected and mocked. That image gave him strength. Finally, he reached the end of the course. His body was battered, his clothing torn, but he stood. The observers, including some skeptical elders, nodded in approval. The third trial was the most difficult, a test of intellect and emotional awareness. He was placed in a chamber that simulated complex psychic challenges. Lights, illusions, and emotional echoes from the participant's mind were projected into the room. Ethan had to navigate the maze and confront illusions designed to break him, to make him question himself and his choices. Images of Leora crying, being rejected, and alone appeared in the illusions. He saw himself stepping back, walking away, letting her suffer. His heart pounded. He refused to give in. I'm not leaving her, he whispered aloud. Not now. Not ever. With every step he pushed past doubt, fear, and confusion. Finally, he reached the center of the chamber. The illusions vanished. A soft voice spoke. You have proven your heart is true. Leora, who had been observing from the gallery, could not hold back a smile. She felt relief and admiration. This human, this outsider, was proving that courage was not limited to her people. But the trials were not over. The council called them both before the entire court once again. This time it was a test of public perception. Could they stand together in front of the people who had laughed at Leora just days before? The hall was filled with whispers and tension. Noble eyes were sharp, watching every move. Ethan and Leora entered together side by side. He did not falter. She did not waver. One of the elders stepped forward, a neutral expression on his face. The human has completed all trials. The princess has chosen him, The council must now vote to recognize this bond. The votes began. Some were quick, some hesitant. Whispers filled the hall. But as the minutes passed, it became clear. Most of the council recognized that the trials had been completed honorably. The human had proven his worth, not through physical superiority, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. The announcement came. The bond is recognized. The hall erupted in murmurs and gasps. Many nobles were shocked. Some were angry. Others looked impressed, some even inspired. Leora felt a surge of relief. She turned to Ethan. He smiled, small but genuine. He reached out and gently held her hand. "You did it," she said softly. "No," he replied. "We did it. Together." For the first time in her life, she did not feel like an outcast. The world had rejected her, mocked her, and tried to push her away. But one human had chosen her. One human had stood beside her when no one else would. The days that followed were filled with preparation for the official ceremony to formalize their union. Leora taught Ethan about her world, her people, and the history of Valyria. He asked questions and listened, learning quickly. She explained the traditions, the powers of her species, and the political tensions that surrounded them. Ethan, in turn, shared stories of Earth, his life there, and how humans faced challenges. Leora found herself fascinated by his perspective, so different from anything she had known. He was not trained as a noble, yet he carried an unexpected wisdom and patience that she had never seen before. As they worked together, their bond grew stronger. She began to see that being human did not make him weaker. It made him unique. His courage was different from the warriors of Valyria, but no less powerful. His loyalty was absolute. His respect for her was genuine. One evening, after a long day of preparation, Leora and Ethan sat together on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights glowed softly in the distance, and the wind carried a gentle chill. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret what?" he replied. "Accepting me, coming into this world, standing up for me." Ethan smiled. "Never. If anything, I wish I could have met you sooner." She looked at him, her eyes filled with something she had never allowed herself to feel in public. Hope. "I don't know what the future holds," she admitted. "Then we face it together," he said simply, and for the first time Leora believed him. She believed that maybe, just maybe, being rejected by her people had led her to something greater than she could have imagined. The day of the ceremony arrived. Nobles and dignitaries gathered in the Great Hall once again, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was tension, yes, but also curiosity. Some whispered in admiration. Some whispered in disbelief. Leora walked into the hall, her hand in Ethan's. She held her head high. For the first time, she did not feel small or unworthy. The whispers faded as people realized she had found someone who truly valued her, not for her appearance, her power, or her bloodline, but for who she was inside. Ethan walked beside her, calm and confident. He had faced trials, endured challenges, and proven himself. He had stood for her, and now he would stand with her for life. As they reached the center of the hall, the council announced their union. The crowd erupted in cheers mixed with disbelief. Leora looked at Ethan and smiled. He squeezed her hand gently. They had both changed. Leora had found someone who saw her for her true self. Ethan had found a world he never imagined and a partner he would protect with everything he had. And in that moment, surrounded by an entire planet that had once rejected her, Leora felt something stronger than anything she had known. Love, acceptance, and the beginning of a future they would face together. The human and the princess, once strangers, now stood as equals. And in that moment, Leora knew that being rejected by all had not been the end. It had been the start of something extraordinary.